Welcome back to the podcast. So, Adam and I, in this episode, we're going to quickly touch on why we think theory is important to the coaching profession and industry as a whole. So, Adam, let's imagine that I'm a coach and, I've just been using the things that I've known for the last 40 years, had some success, been pretty good at times, and I've just come across transforming basketball. Heard about the CLA. I've looked at all the other great people within the ecological kind of landscape sharing these ideas, and I'm a little bit intrigued. But ultimately, I keep hearing that the theory is important. But why? Why is the theory important? Why do we need to have a theoretical framework informing how we coach?
For the theoretical framework to me is, I wouldn't say fundamental. I would say it's foundational. It is something that grounds you. It's something that actually underpins everything that you do as a coach. And as far as ecological dynamics, I do my best to actually have that serve as the foundation for what I do in my everyday life.
Amazing start. And I think it's, if you don't have a theory, let me rephrase that, because everyone has a theory.
Correct.
The difference is if your theory is actually supported by evidence-based ideas or it's not. Because if you believe that doing something like a drill is better than using a CLA activity, well, you have a theory, right? The key difference, therefore, is if that theory is, embedded in contemporary skill acquisition ideas. So, I think a lot of coaches rebel when they hear us talk about theory, but we can't get away from the fact that we all have one. Whether you like it or not, we all have one. So I think something I'm hearing a lot is, that we're too radical at transforming basketball, Adam. And, it's that we're trying to make coaching too scientific. And how I would argue that is that it's actually the opposite. I would say that people using a traditional approach are radical because there's no evidence base to support why they're going about that. And I would not consider myself a radical because everything I do is informed by the theory, right? It's very different. And additionally, I don't think that we are making basketball too sciencey. I would actually say that basketball and basketball coaching has simply just been incredibly oversimplified due to how the game has always been, forms of life, and what our coaching industry has become. So that's why, because of reductionist ideas and this oversimplification, that is why now we're coming in with these ideas and it's rocking the boat a little bit.
Well, yeah, and to me, if you actually talk with the researchers and whatnot, they're not trying to make sports science too sciencey either. They understand their limitations with being able to control certain aspects in the labs and certain things they can study at this point, and they're hoping to expand what they can and cannot study. But there's also budgetary issues. There's simple and even aspects of science can't necessarily calculate certain things, and they completely understand that, and that's why they want to they speak in much more terms that transfer across all of sport. And frankly, I think that's actually very applicable anyways. But to me, again, just to get back to why theory is important, it actually it provides you so much freedom to me. I remember just talking with one of our fellow coaches, I talked with Jonas early on, and he was asking me because I gave some activities and stuff. I helped around a player development session. And he was very intrigued with some of the ideas and whatnot. He's like, "How did you come up with that? Did you take inspiration from somewhere?" I'm like, "Yeah, I took inspiration from the game." And I just thought I just simply sampled from the game. And I'm just how could I do this in a way that's a condensed version, but then also add a little tweak here, tweak there that could invite different behaviors. So I don't need to. I always joke with you. I follow two people in the basketball world as far as what material they put out. You and another person. That's it. I don't know. People ask me who should, trainers and what. Oh, you guys send stuff. Our coaching staff will send stuff and used to send stuff.
Yeah,
in our
stuff.
chat, and oh, making fun of this coach or that coach. I'm like, who the hell cares, man? I don't pay attention to this stuff. I don't follow these people. It doesn't come across my timeline. Why? Because, and when it does, I just simply just like, oh, that's interesting. That's how they're doing. That's how they're approaching things.
And like we said at the time, it's taking ability away from our, focus on actually what's more important. And that's thinking about the players. And if we're wasting time, like look at videos and, looking at all this stuff, it's just, well, we don't have that time anyway, and it doesn't achieve anything. And, that's one of the biggest things we're trying to do at Transforming. We're not, you will see we are not critiquing anyone, on this podcast. We are not doing it on social media. And there's no point to doing that. And I've always believed that, because if we're just getting in these feuds on social media, whatever, it's not helping people understand these ideas. If anything, it's going to push them away from it even more. So, we've done episodes where we, reboot, ideas on what, common kind of critiques we're getting. But it does nothing when we, highlight these people or whatever, because we don't want a fragmented basketball community. We need a united basketball community.
And just to really just hone back in and make sure like we stay somewhat on topic here as far as like the importance of like theory. Because I'm very passionate about this, Alex, because again, it really truly does. If you embrace it, it shapes your whole life when it comes for ecological dynamics. And just to clarify, like my interpretation of the world is it's always an interaction. So the way I describe it, just take whatever words and turn them into nouns. Add an ing to everything, because it's always a process of doing, and you're always interacting with an environment. Something always happens somewhere. Those are like the key things for me, is just take in the context and realize you're always interacting with a context, and it's going to shape who you are and how you're behaving, and behaving being the key word. And as I just mentioned previously, that shapes how I see the game of basketball. Therefore, I don't need, no offense, like when it comes to like products and stuff like that, like we don't need an offense or something. Like I don't need to go and like search for drills or anything like that. Like, and I don't even need to hold on to drills of the past or like rely on them, because again, whatever I put out there, it's actually like, it's really simple, but the adjustments and the manipulation of constraints, that's the actual coaching itself, because I'm adapting to what behaviors are happening in front of me, because that's how I view it. I don't view it as, oh, this activity will give me this result. No, it's what I'm observing, how the athlete is interacting with their environment during that activity, and then we adjust from there.
I want to build on that, Adam, because that was fantastic. And I'll give you an example. During COVID, I was obsessed with trying to like watch every clinic I could online, get as many kind of offenses as I could. But I would say I wasn't collecting drills, but I was collecting small-sided games. And I just started understanding the CLA then, but not coherently, right? So that was 4 years ago now. And now it's like, since then, I'm so selective with what I watch, but it's also like what I watch, I kind of bring into my perspective on how I view life and how I approach basketball. So I think many coaches are in the stage of just trying to collect random drills, and maybe they view the things we share at Transforming Basketball as standalone small-sided games, as opposed to existing as part of a greater methodology. Whereas investing time understanding the theory and skill acquisition, coaches, it changes everything. And I think sometimes coaches wonder why I've gone so deep, why you've gone so deep into this, Adam, and why we don't do things like watch X's and O's and things like that, do scout reports. Well, we still do those things, but we approach it through a different lens. So we're not looking for a set play, and we're not viewing it as one type of magical bullet which is going to solve our problems. Instead, we're looking at how players interact within the set. What are they attuning to? What are they not attuned to? And maybe we're actually, I'd say, more interested in things that don't work, because it shows us what the players need. And, we start thinking, we text each other, look at this, think about this small-sided game, this constraint, what we were doing last year in Italy would be perfect for this situation. And that is why. So when you have a theory, it changes everything. And it's difficult for me to explain unless you've lived it and you've gone through that process. But I can really say that Just if you try and invest 10% of your time as a coach that you maybe invest on other tasks, such as watching video, scout reports, reading other material, if you try and invest that in the theory of skill acquisition, it's going to change your perspective on all those other things. And I think that is why grounding your approach in a theoretical framework is so key. It impacts everything you do.
Yeah, I understand the difficulty behind it, Alex, because again, like I'm an imperfect person too. I think a big trouble is, again, it's sociocultural constraints, and a lot of it has to do with our view on like being productive and what is productive with our time, and like getting tangible results and stuff. Honestly, like the thing I look forward to the most, and I don't do it enough, is not consuming things, not necessarily like reading new material or something like that, which I do, but the most important aspect of anything that I do is actually reflecting on it and thinking about how can it apply elsewhere,
100%.
because that's where all this stuff comes from. It becomes much deeper, and then once you actually think about it and then think about applying it to different contexts and stuff like that, it's all I can say is just it's very peaceful and freeing. I said freeing earlier, and I think that's the most important aspect. You become much more adaptable yourself as a coach, and you feel like you actually have autonomy, much more autonomy this way than you do if you're constantly searching for the next thing. It's a very anxious way to live and perform your life if you're doing it that fashion.
Adam, that's a really nice note to end the podcast on. So we hope we covered, just why the theory is important. Coaches, we want to hear from you. So if any of you have gone through this process since we started transforming, where you've really immersed yourself in an ecological approach and you've really tried to get to grips with it, please let us know on social media. And we want to know what changed for you so that, we have kind of more kind of ammunition for the next time we have to explain just why this stuff matters. So thanks again, and see you on another episode shortly.